granniopteryx, granniopteryx. She knows the truth, she's linking every link.
When the educational system has gone, then the society has gone. And I'm starting to really worry about the educational system. And it's not just the universities. It starts here. I've played this video before. I'll just play selected clips from it now. So what happens here is one of the girls obviously started recording a conversation between the girls and the teacher. And then you wonder why the teachers have said that kids can't bring mobile phones into the classrooms anymore. So this is when the girls started recording it. The sound isn't terrific, so I'm going to repeat some of what was said. But here you see the subtitles. You just really upset someone saying things. That's what the teacher said.
Saying things like should be in an asylum.
I didn't say that.
She was strawmanning the girl. She said that the girl had said that people who identify as another gender should be in an asylum, and the girl says, "I didn't say that. I just said."
I just said if they want to identify as a cow or something, then they're like genuinely unwell.
That if they want to identify as a cow or something, then they are genuinely crazy.
Yeah, they're crazy.
You were questioning their identity.
And then the teacher's answer to that is, you were questioning their identity. So the teacher has already told the girls that reality is not solid ground anymore.
I haven't said anything about them.
But where did you get this idea from that there's only two genders?
And then the teacher says, where did you get the idea that there are only two genders? Again, the teacher is doing what she can to pull the carpet of reality from under the feet of these kids who apparently have more sense than her. And she's trying to bring them down to her nonsense level.
I just think it's my opinion. That is my opinion. If I respect their opinion, can't they respect my opinion?
So the teacher says you have to respect their opinion, and the girl very sensibly says, if I respect theirs, shouldn't they respect mine? Her opinion being that you're a bit crazy if you think you're a cow.
Not an opinion.
There's no other private part.
And then the girl says there's only a boy and a girl. There's no other private parts. I love these kids. They are so articulate and sensible.
Gender is not linked to the parts that you were born with.
And then the teacher says gender isn't linked to the parts you were born with.
It's about how you identify.
It's how you identify.
What I said right from the very beginning of the
I just don't agree with that. So why should I have to listen
Biological sex, there is actually 3 biological sexes.
So the teacher then says, well, there are actually 3 biological sexes. Because
you can be born intersex.
You can be born intersex. And, you know, that's like saying that there are people with 2 heads because you can be born as a conjoined twin. Well, yeah, but how many of those in the world? Probably more, actually, than people born intersex. But that's just a guess I'm making.
You can be born with male and female body parts or hormones.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah, there's 3. There's not 300. Doesn't mean...
Yeah, there's 3.
And then she says you can be born with both sets of organs. Actually, usually you can be born with both sets, but one of them isn't really operational.
Like biological sex. In terms of gender, there are lots of genders.
And then she says, and there are lots of genders.
There is transgender. There is agender.
There's transgender, there's agender.
Yeah, but you can't have... Just don't agree with it. We just think it's all just...
And then one of the girls says, well, we don't agree with that. If you have a vagina, you're a girl.
Vagina, you're a girl.
And if you have a penis, you're a boy.
Yeah.
But cisgender is not necessarily the way to be. You were talking.
And then the teacher, again, pulling reality away from these kids, says cisgender, which is her shorthand for people who accept the gender that they are. But she's saying cisgender, which means people who are heterosexual. But she could have used that. That's just one of a number of things that you could be. Not your behaviour, but what you are. That's the problem.
About the fact that cisgender is the norm, that you identify with the gender of the sexual order that you're born with, or you're weird. That's basically what you're saying, which is really despicable.
Okay, so then the teacher again says to the girls, she puts words in their mouths, you identify as the gender with the sexual parts that you have, and anything else is weird. And which is not what the girls said. They said it isn't really the norm, which is something else. And then the teacher tells them that they're despicable for thinking that way. Now, I want you to notice the teacher, how semi-literate the teacher is. Just listen to this.
How is it? Loads of people agree with that. There's only a small majority of people who actually...
There's only a small majority of people who actually think that. She doesn't even know the difference between majority and minority. So here we have somebody who is really stupid, who is setting herself up to teach these kids that reality isn't reality. And it basically, my feeling about that teacher is that she doesn't grasp the world that well, and she's trying to bring everyone else down to her level. And before anyone starts talking about, woke women, well, those girls are also, they're like 13 or 14, I think, must be something like that. And they pretty much have a sensible attitude on the world, I'd say.
And why do you think we have so many problems in the world with homophobia?
And that's got nothing to do with homophobia, actually.
Yeah, but
Because of people.
And the girls say that. Yeah, not homophobia, it's transgender.
yeah, that's not transgender.
Yes,
I'm
it
fine
is.
with lesbians and gay people.
Same.
I've got nothing against them.
But gender there is a link between it, and you're saying that people
There
can't
isn't
change.
one.
Right, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but what it ends up with is the teacher is desperately losing the argument, and in the end, she shuts it down by saying, I'm going to report you to Mrs. I don't know, the headmistress or the, I don't know what, a social worker in charge of the school, whatever. So here we have something going on in the school. The kids are pushing back. But we have teachers in these schools. That teacher should have been sacked. I don't think she was. She should have been sacked. There is no way that anybody teaching my children should be teaching my children that sort of rubbish. And if I had any control over the school, which I don't, I'd have made sure she lost her job. She is not a fit teacher. But I'm quite sure she is pretty representative of a particular type of teacher, which is getting more and more traction in schools. Because what's happening, and I've said this about the BBC, you get people with weird social ideas, and then when they get into positions of responsibility, the next tranche of employees that come in are interviewed, and they pick the ones with the same weird ideas, perhaps even more extreme, and so it gets worse and worse. And that's, I'm using this to illustrate this because I just read this in the Spectator. So what I'm reading to you now is an article that appeared in the Spectator and just recently, and it was written by Andrew Gilligan. Okay, so it says here, after the Jason Arday disaster, there's new evidence that things have gone deeply wrong at Cambridge. And you see, the people who are at Cambridge now are the sort of people who would have gone through schools with teachers like this. We can reveal, Gilligan says, that a former supporter of Hizb ut-Tahrir, that is it's a very, now banned as a terror group, has been appointed Assistant Research Professor of Education at Cambridge, the same faculty that used to employ Jason Arday. We're not going to forget him in a hurry, are we? Farah Ahmed has explicitly attacked Western education as a threat to Muslims. So we have the same situation going on here. She is attacking Western education the same way as this teacher, whoever she is attacking reality in school. It's all the same idea. There is no set framework to anything. Well, this teacher has no set framework to gender, and Farah Ahmed says there should be no set framework to British teaching. She is very happy to have the set framework of Muslim teaching, by the way, but British teaching is wrong because it's not Muslim. It's a threat to Muslims. She condemned democracy and integration and criticised British schools for teaching pupils that child marriage is wrong. During her time at Cambridge, she's written that the Islamic concept of education is sharply opposed to gaining literacy and numeracy and other disciplinary skills demonstrated through qualifications. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but what I think it means is that she is opposed to the idea of children being literate and numerate and having exams that prove that they've reached a certain standard at any given stage. These statements are part of her long record of bigoted, extremist and separatist views on education. Look, I don't mind her having separatist views on education. Muslim education degenerated after about the 12th century into a system that pretty much guaranteed that Islam was going to become static and semi-literate for the rest of its tenure of the countries it had control over. And if she wants to do that, then we in the West have less worries about being overtaken by Islam. But what she wants to do is apply these rules to British schools. In a Hizb ut-Tahrir pamphlet, Education and Identity, originally in 2002, republished in 2017, which means she hasn't changed her mind, and obtained by The Spectator, Ahmed writes that the Muslim community as a whole in Britain needs to recognise that Western education is a threat to our beliefs and values. And yes, it is, because we have our system and they have theirs. And really, as I say, if she wants to form a bunch of semi-literates who live in Britain and don't affect the rest of British education, I can see an argument for that. I'm not that happy about it, but I can see the argument for it. But not that it should be brought out into the wider British world. That is strictly something that she should be keeping within the Muslim community, or taking all the Muslims back to countries where the entire education system is based on this. But it isn't, you see, because even in Pakistan they have nuclear scientists, and that is definitely not part of this whole Muslim educational framework. But, you see, she is employed here in Britain. In Cambridge, Ahmed is now responsible for postgraduate research in education at Britain's top university and for teaching undergraduate students. So again, let's just remind ourselves. These girls were being taught that what is real is not real, that their whole world is a sort of floating ukiyo-e. I think that's how it's pronounced, the Japanese idea of the floating world. That they live in a floating world, that there is nothing solid to anchor themselves to, and That's what she is doing in the Department of Education in Cambridge to older students. In a chapter in the 2002 pamphlet, she criticises the national curriculum, which, as bad as it is a framework for the education of our children. And, you know, I was talking to a friend this afternoon, and she was telling me that there was some television show. You know, I don't watch television because I don't pay for the license. But she said there was this show, and they got somebody from one of the singers from Bucks Fizz, and another singer who'd been on Britain's Got Talent. You know, I'm not sure of the names, but they were trained briefly by an opera coach, and they did quite well. That is, both of them did have good voices, and they were taken to see Madame Butterfly, or they were taught songs from Madame Butterfly. And my friend told me that that both of them actually said they had never heard of the opera Madame Butterfly. I mean, I'm not talking about never having been taken to the opera Madame Butterfly. They didn't even know of its existence. And that's because they were, let's go back to this, they went to schools like this, where you had dumb teachers who had no idea of reality and didn't teach kids what really counted, just spent hours discussing gender identity with them by the looks of things. What a waste of time. Those kids could be learning something else. Instead, they're arguing with an idiot about an unreality. Anyway, a national curriculum, according to Farah Ahmed, she said, criticises the national curriculum as a form of systematic indoctrination to build model British citizens. I wish it were, but as bad as it is, that should be what education is for, to build the personalities of people who are going to carry the torch into the next generation of British values and educational general knowledge, which it looks like is not being done that well right now. Who will seek to actively, that's split infinitive, by the way, so, and this is the head or deputy head of the Department of Education, who will seek actively to take part in the implementation of the secular capitalist system in British society. And yes, that's what they are supposed to be doing. And naturally, such a system will not be suitable to the needs of Muslim students as the Aqidah system, as the Aqidah, which is their belief system. She attacks British schools for teaching that polygamy or marriage under the age of 16 is a bad thing. Gosh. Worst of all, religious tolerance is primarily pushed in religious education, meaning that Islam is taught as a religion like any other, putting its value on the same level as Christianity, Buddhism, Judaism, Hinduism, Sikhism, and the like. So there you see inside her mind. It's like she's just thrown open an enormous window and you can see straight into her mind. Islam is a religion like any other, she fulminates. Just like Christianity and Sikhism and Judaism and Hinduism. But she knows in her soul, in her heart, in every cell in her body that Islam is not a religion like any other. Islam is everything. And she is in charge of directing the education of students who go to the Department of Education in Cambridge. Science is a problem too, because the teaching of evolution, Muslim children will be exposed to ideas that contradict Islam. And in any subject, boys and girls may be asked to work together. Oh no, we can't use the cross, sorry. As Muslim parents, we try to protect our children from the rubbish that Western society encourages. Well, Western society does have its problems, but I'd suggest that a society where women are kept illiterate and where girls are married to old men at the age of 9 is a pretty rubbish system all on its own. And let's just finish off with Farah Ahmed. This is her PhD research, according to this. Pedagogy as dialogue between cultures, exploring halakha, an Islamic dialogic pedagogy that acts as a vehicle for developing Muslim children's shakhsiyah, which is their identity, in a pluralist society. Now, a halakha is a concept of a circle. And that's actually where the idea of a chair, a professorship given, because the first university that Europeans got to know about was a university in Morocco. And the students would sit in a circle around the professor. And they'd sit cross-legged on the floor, and he was the one who had the chair. Now, the Arabs did not invent the university. That was invented in India by the Hindus, and they invented the idea of a university around 600 BC. When the Arabs invaded India, they burnt the Hindu universities, but they took some ideas, and one of them was this university in Morocco, which is still going and is considered by, I don't know, whatever authority it is, as the oldest continuous university in operation in the world. That started around sort of 850 or somewhere in the late 9th century AD in Morocco. And then the University of Bologna, the first recognizable European university, was around 1100 or it was 1050, something like that, in Bologna. And halakha is the idea of sitting in a circle while your teacher teaches you things. But how it's done in Arab societies is the teacher teaches you things and then the students parrot it back. Now, I want you to understand there's a very good reason for this. It didn't come out of total barbarism. Remember, the Arabs had a lot of a sort of nomadic society. They did a lot of travelling. Books are heavy, books are cumbersome, and books get eaten by insects. So the whole idea of Arab education has been learning by rote from teachers, because you can carry the books in your head. Yeah, I know Muhammad had people writing things down for him, but the idea, the cultural idea was there of repeating by rote. And she thinks that this is a good idea to carry on. So the research presents an argument for the use of dialogic halakha. That is, I tell you this, you kid, you pupil, I tell you this, what did I say? And then they repeat it back to me. And that keeps on going. To develop the personal autonomy of young Muslims, I would take issue with that, in 21st century Britain. It begins by developing a theoretical grounding for Islamic conceptualizations of personal autonomy and dialogic pedagogy. If you think that's a word salad, yes it is. In doing so, it aims to generate dialogue between Islamic and Western educational traditions. Now, just look at that. Islamic is spelt with a capital I, and it's a word. Western is with a small w, and it's in quotes. So what she's saying is that the Islamic educational tradition is proper, and Western is, well, it's a bit amorphous. Again, pulling the reality out from under your feet. And to clarify the theoretical foundation of halakha, a traditional Islamic oral pedagogy that has been adapted to meet the educational needs of Muslim children in contemporary Britain. Okay, so yeah, I don't think I did much more on that. So that's what's going on, and is now running the educational department of Cambridge University. And yeah, what can I say? What can we do? I have no influence over Cambridge University hiring policy, but it is going further and further down a rabbit hole, which I am, well, pretty upset about, actually. And I suppose the more people are aware of this, the less traction it might get, although it seems to be all over the place, right from this 13-year-old girl, according to the legend here, up to the Dreaming Spires of Cambridge. Well, I know the Dreaming Spires were Oxford, but it's the same thing. And I used to love Cambridge. When one of the teaching assistants told me she had this job, she was set for a career in Cambridge, you know, going on the line, and she was going to leave because she couldn't stand the closed shop attitude. I couldn't understand it at the time. My apologies to her, I understand it now. Okay, till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.